Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Good afternoon and Ramadan Mubarak to everyone. Welcome to today's INCEIF Research Sharing. My name is Mohammed Nasrua. I am currently a first semester PhD student and I am your EMC for this afternoon. On behalf of the organization committee, I would like to welcome everyone to today's INCEIF Research Sharing Series. Just a little bit of reminder before we start. So please mute your microphones so that is no interruption during our speaker presentation. We will also have questions and answers session at the end of this presentation. If you have any questions to ask, you may type them in the chat box and I will read out your questions to our speaker. Or you can raise your hand and unmute to ask at the end, obviously. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, as an introduction, INCEIF Knowledge Management Center, KMC, organizes the Research Sharing Series to promote publications by faculty members to research and academic work. This is the 5th time this event has been organized. The last series was conducted in September last year, featuring Professor Dr. Aisha Muniza, who shared about the journal article entitled COVID-19, its impact in Hajj and Umrah and a future direction. We are privileged to have with us today Dr. Faris Djafri to share on the topic pricing of family Takaful products, a Shari'ah perspective. Dr. Faris is currently a research fellow at INCEIF Research Management Center. He holds a PhD in Islamic finance from University of Malaya and a master's in finance from the International Islamic University, Malaysia, and also a bachelor degree of science in finance from University of Batna, Algeria. Currently, Dr. Faris is the managing editor of ISRA International Journal of Islamic Finance and a member of editorial boards of several journals. He is also an IOF certified Sharia advisor and auditor. He co-authored the book Borsat al-Sila, its development and role in facilitating commodity trading, published by University Malaya Press. And he has also published many chapters in books and several articles in peer-reviewed and high-impacted journals. So he has also presented several papers in the field of Islamic finance in local and international conferences. His area of research interest includes Islamic finance in general, Takaful, FinTech, Islamic banking regulation, and Sharia governance. So without further delay, I invite our speaker, Dr. Faris Djafri, to share about his paper, Pricing of Family Takaful Products, a Sharia Perspective. Dr. Faris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulih al-Kareem. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, and Ramadan Kareem. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our siyam, fasting, our prayers, and our qiyam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all our deeds, inshallah. Before we start, allow me to thank KMC for inviting me to share my thoughts about one of my research paper, which is published in 2020. Yeah, it was published in 2020, and also it was co-authored with Professor Yunus Sawalhi, one of the senior researchers at ISRA Research Management Center, INCEIF University. So as you can see that the topic that I'm going to speak about is about the pricing of family Takaful product, Sharia perspective. So I will touch a bit on the introduction background of the topic, and then I will go to the literature review, research objectives, method used in this paper, and then I will discuss on the pricing element in family Takaful product, the Sharia aspect of pricing elements, and finally conclusion and some recommendations. The concept and the objective, objectives and pricing element of life insurance products and Takaful are same. there is no much difference when it comes to the concept and the objective, and even to the pricing elements of both products. I mean, life insurance and family takaful. So from the conventional perspective, if we want to define pricing or pricing element in takaful, pricing in insurance refers to the mechanism of determining the cost and profit of an insurance product, which means that the premium. So the premium is basically the price that the takaful participant or the insured must pay to the insurance company or the takaful operators in order to get the benefit defined in the policy. So similarly, the pricing of family takaful product, as I said, is an integral part of the product development, marketing, and profitability of the takaful or for the takaful operators. Being developed in a conventional insurance, the method of pricing have become part and parcel of the main task of the actuary appointed by the takaful operators. In other words, that the takaful operators adopted the same practices, the same actuarial practices that use assumptions based on the best estimates. So when we look, the pricing element, also known as assumptions, that underwriters or the actuaries, those who are assessing the application of policyholders. So the actuaries or the underwriters use, the elements that is used to arrive to a fair price are four components, which are the actual cost of loss. The second one is the expenses of operating and managing the insurance pool. The third one is the allowance for unexpected loss, and finally, earning on investment of collected premium. So basically, these are the four main blocks, that consist or that consist the pricing elements of takaful operators of takaful products. So coming to the literature review, when we did this research, the literature review on takaful pricing was very rare, I would say, and the literature on Sharia compliance, particularly at that time, back to 2019, does not exist. There is no research that discussed the pricing element of takaful operators or takaful products from the Sharia perspective. And most of the literature review, which I found, discuss the Sharia aspect of the takaful contract, the distribution of the surplus, which is different from one jurisdiction to another, the model of takaful use, the mudaraba, the wakala, the combination of both products, mudaraba and wakala, and even recently still the research are going on in terms of the model that is used by takaful operators. And at ISRA, we developed a new model called Musharaka Ta'awuniya, and the model was tested from the Sharia perspective and also was tested from an actuarial perspective, and it was viable and very competitive compared to other models which exist in the industry. So a lot of research, and most of these are on the model, as I said, on incorporating waqf in the takaful, and the relation between the takaful operators and the participant. There is a debate, and it is still going on. What is the relationship between the takaful participant and takaful operators? Is it based on tabarru'? Is it based on iltizam bil tabarru'? Is it based on ta'awun cooperation? Though some Sharia scholars criticize the contract, I will not say the contract, the concept of ta'awun, and to them, ta'awun is not a contract, but it is a value, it's a qima, it is a value that can be used in takaful industry. Other research also, focuses on the operational and the technical aspect of the takaful operators. And recently, a number of research also discuss the performance of takaful operators. Having said that, none of this reference has addressed the Sharia compliance of the pricing elements of family takaful product. Okay. So the gap of the study was clear, and there was a lack, of Sharia characterization and analysis of the pricing element of takaful. So when it comes to the research objectives, we come up with the three research objectives. The first one is to highlight the concept and the principles and features of the pricing of family takaful. The second objective is to identify the main elements of pricing used by Takaful operators. And the last one, and this is the most important objective, is to investigate the Sharia compliance of selected pricing elements used by Takaful operators. So this is basically the objective that we address in our research paper. And for the methodology, we have adopted a qualitative method of inquiry and utilizes content analysis to analyze the conformity or disparity of family takaful pricing mechanism. And also we have conducted an open-ended interviews with the 5 Sharia actuaries in Malaysia to examine, their perception and their opinions on the pricing of family takaful product. And finally, also we have adopted a comparative method, to discuss the views of these interviews or these actuaries and compare it with the classical scholars in order to assess the Sharia compliance of the pricing elements. Okay, coming to the pricing elements in family takaful, which is the first objective. As I mentioned, that the pricing elements are the factors considered in pricing an insurance or takaful product. The fee, when it comes to the price or the fee, is statistically determined by an actuary or underwriters who use, insurance, mathematics, or probability to predict the present value of the future benefits due to be paid to the insurer or to the policy holder. And this is what we call the premiums or the contribution. And the insurance and the takaful industry adopt 2 types of premium or contribution. The first one is single contribution, which is paid in lump sum, and the other one is a periodic one, which is paid on a periodic time. Now, why the pricing is important? Number one is rate adequacy. This is a very important component when it comes to the pricing, and it means that the present value of the price must be consistent with the future benefit to be paid to the policy holder. If the price or the rate is not adequate, it may affect, the present value of the price to affect the future benefit that need to be paid to the policyholder. So this is number one. Number two is the rate equity, and this would entail a proper underwriting mechanism whereby the risk are adequately selected, classified, and prices. This is also another important, component when it comes to the pricing, because without proper, underwriting, without proper mechanism to select, the pricing element is involved in the risk, the pricing may not be fair to the policyholder. And finally, the rates should not be excessive and must be matched with the benefit provided at maturity. Meaning to say that they should not be too excessive, or the rate or the pricing should not be too excessive, affecting the customer ability to pay the premium. And on the other hand, they should not be too low, which will also affect, the pool fund of the takaful operators, and will make it, or will put it at risk of insolvency. Mohammed, just 1 minute, 1 minute.
Sure, you have time. It's okay.
Sorry for that. Just to continue, as you can see that, some of the pricing element that is used by insurance and takaful operators, and this is, used by Bank Negara Malaysia. As you can see that a number of pricing elements, are used in insurance and takaful, namely the mortality, the morbidity, the contingency. As you can see, for example, for mortality is the probability of death in a lifespan. Morbidity is the probability of injuries based on the past experience. So basically, those are the elements that used by the underwriters, and also they used by the actuaries in order to identify the price of the certificate. And from our research, we have identified, based on the interview that we have conducted with the actuaries, we have identified a number of price elements which involved in family takaful product. As you can see from the table on the right, these are the pricing elements which identify from the interview, and it is almost 30 element that is involved in the pricing: mortality, investment return, future expenses, cost of card, family medical history, shareholders profit. So all these elements are involved when it comes to the family takaful product. And the pricing element of takaful, uncovered a number of features. Number one is that if you see to this element, you will realize that most of these, elements are adopted, are based on assumptions that the underwriters and actually make. So most of it are based on assumptions, and there are two types of assumptions. Assumptions that are statistically established, such as mortality, morbidity. So these are statistically established. The second type of assumption is that it refers to the loading that vary from one insured to another, such as the health condition, the family health history, and the lifestyle. So this is number one. The second feature which we realize from this pricing element is that the price of insurance or takaful is not subject to the force of the market, namely the demand and the supply. In other words, the price is mainly determined based on the unique mortality of each insured participant. And finally, the last one, the number three, since the subject matter of an insurance or takaful is the risk, then the Sharia ruling on the pricing, which apply to sales and leasing, are not the same, as the pricing used for takaful. The subject matter for takaful operators is based on the risk, and therefore the methodology used for pricing is totally different from the one used for sale and lease, where the asset, where it is based on asset or based on use fact. Okay, coming to the Sharia aspect of the elements and method used to price family takaful. As I mentioned, that we have two assumptions. That we classify that into two perspective assumptions based on the current and past data of the participant, and this include the participant health condition, the family medical history, the fees and charges as a component of family takaful product, and cost of card. The other category, or the other assumption, is based on the future projections, which include the mortality, morbidity, investment return, future expenses, future interest, and future inflation. So in our paper, we didn't examine all the elements, which is almost 30 elements, but we have selected the most relevant one to the Sharia, and that we can analyze from the Sharia perspective. So I will start with the assumptions based on the future projections. So the number one, mortality and morbidity. So when it comes to the Sharia compliance of these particular assumptions, so we analyze that based on the on various Sharia source and categories of evidence, including ibaha, permissibility, al-maslaha, al-masalih al-mursala, or the public interest, al-istiqra, induction, and also based on urf. So when it comes to mortality or morbidity, from the ibaha or the permissibility perspective, there is no Sharia text, from the Quran or the Sunnah on the permissibility of pricing a risk based on mortality and morbidity. So as we know that the legal maxim الأصل في المعاملات الإباحة unless there is a contradict from the Sharia perspective. So when it comes to the mortality and morbidity, I mean from the إباحة perspective, there is no Sharia text, or even from the Sunnah on the permissibility of pricing that is based on mortality or morbidity table. So from the perspective of مصالح مرسلة, which means that, or which defined as the benefit that is neither rejected by the Sharia nor explicitly considered. Also, we found that there is no issue in order to, use the mortality and morbidity tables, and it is deemed that the most, accurate instrument when it comes to predicting people's injuries and death. And the same thing, when it comes to the the same conclusion also where we found that the table of mortality and morbidity can be found also from it is legitimate from the method of istiqra induction. Induction meaning that it is the process of tracing a number of incident or event that would eventually help to conceptualize a universal principle. So in general, all this, or the mortality and morbidity component or element, is line with the Sharia principles, and this is in accordance with all, categories which I just mentioned, masalih mursala also, and also based on the al-ibaha, the permissibility, and also the last one based on istiqra or induction. The second element which we investigated from the Sharia perspective is the investment return. So as you know that the cash flow method of pricing takaful necessitate that the pricing should be at loss at the beginning, or should be at discount at the beginning of the coverage. And in such a way that the future investment return would offset, the underwriter. So the cash flow when it comes to takaful operators is based on should be based at loss or at discount in such a way that the future investment return will offset any underwriting loss. However, sometimes the future return may fall short in terms of meeting the assumptions, and there will be an effect, an adverse effect on the solvency of the risk fund that could lead to deficit. Sometimes we may not ensure, that the investment return is enough to pay the claims, and therefore sometimes it's not enough to pay the claims, and this will affect, the solvency of the risk fund in the takaful operators. And in such situation, this may trigger, the card injection that will affect the surplus distribution if the investment return cannot offset, the low pricing or the pricing that is at loss. It may lead to inject a card, and this will lead to, or may lead to of the pricing which could be disadvantage for the participant. So on the adverse effect of this situation, Bank Negara come up with a fiduciary duty for takaful operators to design a business strategy and consider all factors that could affect the solvency of takaful operators. And as you can see that from here, takaful operators shall have in place appropriate investment strategy that consider the nature, the currency, the amount, the timing of takaful liability. The investment strategy must be reasonably formulated to avoid adverse impact on takaful fund. So this is a very important strategy by Bank Negara in order to ensure the adverse effect that may come from the investment the investment return. So, as I mentioned that this strategy is a move from Bank Nigara in order to ensure that the companies or takaful companies come up with a design business strategy that will that could affect the solvency of takaful operators. Having said that, while Bank Nigara has regulated the compensation made by takaful operators to the risk fund, I mean, we found that there is no regulation to compensate the shareholders when there is a negligence from the takaful operators is proven. I mean, there is a policy from Bank Nigara when it comes to the insolvency of the takaful fund, but there is no clear strategy from Bank Nigara when it comes to compensate or when it comes to compensate the shareholders if there is a negligence from takaful operators. And therefore we have proposed and recommended that there should be an amendment to takaful operator framework that address this issue. I will just skip this one, which is related to interest rate. This is a very common practice where the interest rate is involved in the pricing, and the takaful operators are allowed to adopt CLIBOR and SIBOR when it comes to the interest rate. And this practice is approved by the Majami' Fiqhiyya and even by IOFI, and even recently even the Shari'ah Advisory Council, the SSC of Bank Nigara, ruled that it is permissible to adopt risk-free rate that depart from labor. Now, coming to the assumption that is based on the current and past data of the participant. Number one is the participant or the participant's health condition. When it comes to takaful operators, rule of thumb is that the takaful practice is that healthier people bring less risk to the pool. Thus, the underwriter or the actual will classify them as a standard risk. So those who are healthy, when it comes to the subscription of takaful, they will consider it as a standard risk. On the other hand, those who are elderly and those people with the chronic illness, usually they categorize as a substandard or high risk by the underwriters or actuary. I mean, from Sharia, when we analyze that, I mean, from a Sharia perspective, we find that, I mean, such kind of categorization may not be fair. I mean, to the participant, it may be hypothetically argued that providing insurance and takaful for healthier people and rejecting those with certain illness is unfair. It looks like there is no adala or justice there, and we are talking now about value-based intermediation for takaful operators, and one of the components is to empower communities, those who are B40 and below that. So it is very important to reconsider including the element of health condition when it comes to the pricing, because to us we believe that it is not fair when it comes to the participant health condition. So therefore, the takaful operator should not decline any person from wanting to the fund to help other people, but instead they should provide a control in the amount of coverage in the initial years of the coverage. The other element is also the family medical history. The underwriters also may give a high risk rating if both parents have died before the age of 50. So if you are going to get or to buy your policy from the takaful operators, they will check the history or the medical history of your parents. If they die before 50, then the contribution will be very high. You see, so these assumptions, when we analyze it, I mean, we found that this assumption is not anonymously accepted by the Sharia scholars. And although the assumption might not be speculative, and I mean, from the underwriter point of view, they have to take all this into consideration to avoid the insolvency of the takaful pool fund. But The current application might raise a question as to whether it is Sharia compliant for a person to be, burden for the health condition of another, which means his parents or his family members. So, I mean, from the Sharia perspective, we found that also, including the family medical history in the underwriting is to some extent is not fair, especially, I mean, for young generation, for example. Okay. So therefore, we have proposed some recommendation whereby discount can still be provided by way approved by actuary. So it can be given some discount for those people who have, their families, they have problem. For example, their mother or father, they have medical history problems, so they can provide some discount to them. Surplus, could be used also to subsidize the price for participants with the substandard risks. And also we propose also waqf and zakat that can be used, for micro takaful scheme in order to assist those people who have the problem of family medical history. Another element also that we have discussed here is the fee and charges as a component of family takaful. I mean, we found that, in addition to the wakala fee that is charged by the takaful operators, the takaful operators also ask for wakala risk management fee that is charged for the tabarra fund. And we found that this fee on the tabarra fund, I mean, it is stated from the clause of Bank Nigara that this fee on the Tabarra fund can only be recognized as an income to takaful operators if the surplus realized. Therefore, we believe that, in our view, that such kind, of imposing a fee and charges in addition to the wakala fee may seen as a surplus taken upfront by the takaful operators, and also it may perceive it as a double wakala fee, charged by the takaful operators. I mean, therefore, we propose also that the fee on tabarru must find a proper Sharia justification and further regulation in terms of the structure. I mean, we suggest that it should be, clearly stated or clearly separate between the wakala fee and the wakala fee on tabarru. It should be clearly stated by the takaful operators to avoid such kind of confusion. Okay. The last element that we have discussed in our paper is the cost of qard. As you know, that qard, it can be used in order to, in case of a deficit in the takaful pool fund. And what we found from the, in our study from the interview conducted with the actuaries, we found that two views were prominent when it comes to the cost of qard. The first, group of actuaries, they hold the view that the cost of qard is not embedded in the price. And the second group maintain the opposite view. And this, makes us feel like there is a lack of transparency when it comes to the cost of qard. And it was too difficult, to figure out whether the cost of qard is in fact embedded in the price or not. And even from the materials, the data that we have examined, it was, really difficult to confirm if the cost of qard is embedded in the price or not. And this is the possibilities, that we have arrived at. And all these possibilities 2, 3, and 4, do not trigger any Sharia issues except where the cost of qard is factored into the price and the qard is recovered from the surplus or the future surplus. In such kind of situation, if the qard is recovered from the future surplus, this may lead to what we call qard jarra riba, or qard that is out into riba. So therefore, the research, we have recommended that the regulators should place more regulation on certain family takaful products that prone to either aggressive or conservative mode of pricing. And also we have recommended that the cost of qard, as inducted by some practitioners, should not be factored into the pricing of the takaful operators. So in conclusion, most of conventional family insurance pricing mechanisms adopted by takaful insurance are based on ibaha, are permissible, and also from masalih mursala and from istiqa, they are in line with the Sharia principles. The investment return assumptions is not quite fair to the shareholders, and there should be it's not fair to the shareholders should there be a loss in the investment, as I explained before. And also adding an extra loading to the contribution because of family medical history. The family medical history should not be taken for granted. And any loan or debt whose interest is charged upfront and does not reflect in the actual cost of qard is prohibited, and it is riba. And also finally, there is an ambiguity, as to why the fee of tabarruh fund is imposed by takaful operators, since there is a wakala fee that is supposed to cover all the administrative and administrative costs. So in recommendation, we have recommended that in order to ensure, price fairness, the regulator should further regulate certain family takaful products, and also to control the pricing of external factors such as family medical history. The regulators, should direct the takaful industry to avoid, burdening the participants with such things of family medical history, and so on. And the third recommendation is that the regulation on the cost of qard should be channeled to the takaful operators, cannot embed it into the price. I mean, I have discussed that the qard should not be embedded into the price and the different name. And finally, further research are still, needed to be better disclosed the component of pricing, and to examine this component in deep from the Sharia point of view and from the Sharia perspective. I think with that, I come to the end of my presentation, Brother Muhammad, and I will be very happy to get any question from the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Faris. Thank you for this insightful presentation. It was a very well detailed explanation given by you regarding the topic of today. So now I open the floor for any questions. You may, if you have any question, just raise your hand. You may unmute and introduce yourself and ask your question to Dr. Faris, or you can write it in the chat box and I will read it out. It seems like your presentation was too good, Dr. Faris.
Yeah.
Everything is clear.
Okay, good. I hope. Yeah, I mean
There's three questions in the Q&A section. So, brother,
I don't see them. Where is it? Okay. Q&A. Welcome. No, I don't see anything on my board. Could you forward to me, brother?
Okay. The first question is, in competitive pricing market, final rates, demands, and peer rates are considered as well. And the second one is, shareholders and takaful operator are treated to be the same naturally. Negligence of operator will this benefit the shareholder? Regulations are more to protect participants rather than shareholder. And the second question is, in pricing, the issue of social fairness and actuarial fairness comes to play. From Shari'ah perspective, which one should be preferred?
Can you repeat the last question, brother?
In pricing, the issue of social fairness and actuarial fairness comes to play. From Shari'ah perspective, which one should be preferred?
Okay. I mean, the first question, I didn't get the first question. Do I need to answer, Mohammed, or I need to get all the question and answer?
You can, yeah, let's start with the first question, I guess. Did you have it down?
The first question was not clear to me, but the second one, which is related to the shareholders and the Takaful operators, my explanation was that, I mean, if you look to the Takaful operators framework, tough, there was a clear clause, that protect, the Takaful operators in case there is a risk insolvency in the Takaful pool fund. However, when it comes to the shareholders, there was no clause that protect the shareholders in case there is a negligence of the Takaful operators, and therefore we have recommended that it's good to have a clause maybe, or to add a clause in the Takaful operator framework that protect the shareholders. Though the question was that there is no difference between the shareholders and Takaful operators, but to me, I still believe that there is a difference between the management, the Takaful operators who manage the pool, or the Takaful operators and the Takaful pool fund, and the shareholders. The other two questions was not clear to me, to Mohammed. The first question, I didn't get it. Maybe I can see there from the chat.
Yeah, so we have in the chat, so in competitive pricing market final rate, demand and peer rate are considered as well.
Yeah. I mean, I have mentioned in my presentation, Takaful operators or Takaful products are not based on demand and supply, competitive when it comes to competitiveness. But yeah, the demand and supply competitiveness is there. But when it comes from an actuary perspective or from an underwriter perspective, it is based on individuals, based on case by case individuals, where you need to include all the pricing elements. So yes, in a competitive pricing market, demand and supply can play a role, but I still believe when it comes from an actuary perspective, the pricing element is very important to decide on the case by case.
Okay. So, and the third question is, in pricing, the issue of social fairness and actuarial fairness come to play from Shari'ah perspective. Which one should be preferred?
This is a very good question, when we talk about social fairness, and maximizing the profit. I have mentioned this in brief, in my presentation, where I say that, now we are talking about value-based intermediation for the Takaful operators, where we need to empower. One of the components of VBIT is to empower, the community. So to me, now is the era of maximizing Maqas Shari'ah, where you need to look beyond the profit maximization, but we need to include the social, welfare of the community, and this is very important. And even when we talk, recently, I mean, the move of Islamic finance is talking about Islamic finance 2.0, where we need to move, beyond the profit. And even from the Sharia perspective, now people are talking about sustainability, integrating, the Maqas Sharia within the legal framework of the financial industry. So all this, in order to maximize the social fairness to the community, and it is very important to have that.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Okay.
And to add it, Brother Muhammad, for the last question, when we talk about takaful, it is based on the concept of ta'awun, cooperation and collaboration between the participants. And therefore, social fairness and empowering the community, especially those people who are in the pool fund, is very important compared to, to other elements of maximizing profit. So when you talk about the concept or the aspect of takaful is about ta'awun, collaboration between the participant, and also about social fairness to each individual in the takaful operator. And this is, I mean, one of the reasons to have this study, when you see the element of pricing, you see that, underwriters, they will consider, the history of the family, your situation, your health. And to some extent, we found that it is not fair, to have all these elements when it comes to underwriting and actuary. And it's good, as to have some kind of collaboration that is in line with the aspect of the Takaful operator and with the Takaful, yeah.
And maybe I will ask you this question. So in that sense, how will the Takaful industry locate itself compared to the traditional insurance industry? And because it needs to be attractive, right?
Yeah, I will say that it's not easy to compare, an industry of 40 years or less with a conventional industry which was there in for decades. But I believe that the growth is there, the momentum is there, and the future is for Islamic finance and for Takaf operators. Yes.
Inshallah. And we're all working toward that, right?
Inshallah.
Okay, so if there is no more questions, let me just see here. Do we have? No, I don't think we have any more questions. So
I hope to have more questions from the floor. We still have at least 10 minutes.
yeah, we have some time. So if someone we have some familiar names here. I don't want to spot people directly, but you should be asking, right? Okay, it's fine. Well, then maybe I will thank you once again, Dr. Faris. I think that's all for today. We have had this INCEIF research sharing session. Before we end the session, I would like to request all participants to switch on their cameras for a quick photo if possible. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saeed. Okay, Brother Hanif, can you go?
I was expecting Dr. Saeed to ask question. I spent a lot of time in preparing this slide and.
No. Well done, Dr. Faz. Well done.
Jazakallah khair.
Maybe Dr. Faris can throw a question to Dr. Saeed. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, smile. Okay, done. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of the program today. Thank you again, Dr. Faris, for the great sharing and presentation. It was a pleasure to have you to share your topic today, and to all the participants. Thank you for joining. We hope you had learned from the author himself. If you want to read this paper, it's available on the IFICR platform. With that, I end today's event with thank you, and see you again in our next INCEIF Research Sharing Series. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you.
And happy, you say sahafturkum. I don't know what that means.
الله يسلمك الله يسلمك.
Okay, salam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, Brother Basra, you may begin. We can start our session.